Is
Carmen.
this is Carmen Wells?
Yes, this is her. Hi, Thomas.
Hello, how are you doing this fine day?
Oh, it's a beautiful day here in sunny California.
That is great. That is great. So you are calling us live from California, are you? Well, I guess we're calling you.
Live.
You are. You are. Have you got us dialed in? Are you listening to us live right now?
I am listening. I'm getting kind of a weird little feedback, so I have it very low.
Absolutely. No, but it's great that it's actually working that far out there. Now, I am trying to simultaneously record this as well, just on my iPhone. Apparently, we're having a little bit of internet connection issues. Possibly, I'm taking up a little bit too much bandwidth using the radio, so I can't record live, unfortunately, but I am trying to record, and
That's
hopefully,
okay.
hopefully it gets your side of the conversation too here. Let's see, what do we want to talk about? I mean, so you're in California. What kind of weather you guys got there right now?
Well, today is actually a beautiful day. We have a nice cool breeze and hot sunny day. It's not earthquake weather, and it's definitely not post-fire weather. It's very beautiful.
That is fantastic. That is fantastic. We've actually got some fires going on in our western provinces out in Canada here. They're pretty bad. They've covered some pretty large areas, but fortunately we actually have some very, very good firefighters and whatnot in the area. And I haven't actually heard of anyone being injured ever in any of these fires. So we're pretty fortunate that way. What kind of weather do you guys have the rest of the time?
Most of the time it is extremely hot. It's hot and it's very dry, but it's just been a little strange this year. I think it has something to do with the whole climate change. It's definitely different than what I'm accustomed to. We have rain one day and then we have sunshine the next. We have an earthquake the next day. And
that is definitely some odd occurrences, and it's not even from what I hear, it's not exclusive to just like California or anything, but everywhere around the world is having just odd weather comparatively to what they're used to for the last, say, 50, 60, 100 years or whatever. And I mean, there's a lot of theories on why that could be happening. I mean, you mentioned climate change. Is that what you believe to be the primary influence of that kind of thing, or what do you think?
I do think it is a problem for everybody. We're in trouble. You know, I mean, the degrees is up, I think, an extra 2%, I believe, is what I last read, and this is what causes these tsunamis, the ice melting, and hot, extreme heat, and unfortunately, you're right. Every continent, every country has just various weathers that are so extreme from what they're accustomed.
Now, you mentioned that the overall temperature, or something similar to that, was up around 2 degrees, or something around that. But I went out and I saw some crazy maps out there that showed that the temperature was actually lower. And now I couldn't quite figure out why that was. Did you ever see any maps like that?
Something about it being lower?
Yeah.
No, I've actually read the opposite.
Well, so as it turns out, you're not wrong. What these maps were, and there's probably some other people that have seen them, but they showed different temperatures between land and water. Now, as an average human being, you would realize that most of the Earth is covered in water. Therefore, most of the Earth's heat is also contained within said water. Water is also pretty dark. It absorbs heat well. Land is less so. It reflects a little bit more of it. So what these maps were showing, and I'm just going over this for anybody who may have read counter evidence, but what these maps showed was that the land had decreased in temperature, but it didn't show the water had actually increased in temperature more than the land had decreased in temperature, and that the water is actually covering a larger surface area. Now, on top of that, you are correct. The ice caps are melting. Now, they've always been melting, but the problem that I found when doing this similar research is that the more they melt, the more water there is, and the less ice there is. And that seems like a simple conclusion. But the problem with that is ice is white and water is not. White reflects, water does not. So the less ice means the faster it melts. So this is a snowballing type of effect, except the opposite of a snowball. It's literally a snowball melting. Faster and faster and faster. The faster it melts, the faster it melts.
Wow.
Things you didn't know.
Yeah, well, you know, kind of like a glass of ice water. You put a ton of ice in it. As it melts, the water just rises up on the glass.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, water is one of those crazy things that it's actually the only liquid that I am aware of that when it freezes, it expands. Everything else, when it gets colder, it contracts. You know, it's just standard chemistry, but water is the super weird one that when it gets colder, it gets bigger. And it floats as well. So having ice above the water, suddenly when it melts, that means the water level rises that much. So.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
So
now,
what do you think the end result would be? More tsunamis?
Yeah. Well, it's entirely possible. I can't actually say that I know enough about how things affect other things to accurately predict what the difference would be, first off, between whether we were here or not and what would naturally be occurring, because I know that there's naturally a lot of CO2 getting pumped out of there, and naturally our planet was heating up anyways, but we are accelerating that process. We're a catalyst of sorts. Now, I guess there's probably a couple people listening here that are wondering who you are. How do I get this random phone number in California?
Well, let's see. I belong to my most favorite group ever, which is called I Hate Donald Trump, because without a doubt, I most certainly do.
That is a great group. I hear it's quite popular. Are you how are you related to that group?
I'm a moderator there, so I make sure that poster-approved new members are welcomed. That we don't have any bad things going on and deleting comments and such. But I most likely love to participate, read lots of information, because there's wonderful information there. Keep us updated on all the current events. And also, somewhat, it feels like being part of a community. You know, we're all on the same page in the sense that we don't really want Trump to be in leadership at this point, but we also can, vent, get some of our frustrations out, come up with action item ideas, be well informed when dealing with various topics. So it's been near and dear to my heart since I joined back in November.
Yeah, it has been a while now. And I mean, there's been some incredible revelations. Now, if anybody actually did go to our site, I say our site because most of you should know by now that I am the administrator for that, and Carmen has been extremely helpful. She's absolutely great, but it's big. It's gotten huge.
Yeah,
and
it's like 100,000 plus. I don't even know where we're at now. 109, 112. I can't even remember.
I saw it at 116 this morning, but I mean,
my goodness,
it's every day, right? Every day. But as a consequence of being so, I guess we're a type of a lightning rod at this point for anybody who feels similar. We're also very polarizing in that we're going to get a lot of people with the exact opposite views coming into the group and specifically trying to disrupt or engage the members or engage people the members may know, or just trying to be generally disruptive, and that's a huge issue. What would you say to people who why how is it possible that people like that can get into a group? There's a lot of ways, but I'm sure that there's people don't quite realize what a moderator goes through and why it's how that happens, because I've done it.
Yeah, well, I do get some feedback sometimes. They're like, why would you let this person in? Or why don't you do a little more vetting or this or that or the other? And I'm going to say this. Yes, there are people who have, unfortunately, malicious intent, and they're going to want to come in, and they're going to want to be disruptive. And when we find it, we get rid of them. They're gone. But you don't want to close yourself off to everybody, because we are seeing the tides turn. A lot of previous supporters are no longer supporters. there's some people looking and asking questions and kind of on the fence, and we can help support, make that decision, maybe help give them some additional information and really realizing where we are as a country and why Trump is so dangerous. So you don't want to completely exclude them. You don't want to say, no, you can't come here because of this. And when they do come, you do let them in, and you do see sometimes they will maybe offer an opposite view. Not necessarily doesn't mean that it was vicious or horrible or attacking and abusive to somebody, but it's good for us to also know that view, because how did we get here? We were completely, dismembered mentally that this even happened, and it's because we really aren't aware of this other percentage of people that have various different views, and we need to be aware of them and how we can address them in the future. So we have to be a little more open-minded. We can't be very cutthroat and say, no, you like Trump, you can't be here. But by all means, those that come in and are intentful of just attacking and being awful and spreading their hate and whatnot, they get removed. I've seen them get removed. I personally remove them. I see you remove them. So we're aggressive about that. It's just everybody's going to have an opinion, and unfortunately, I don't believe we can be very specific in saying absolutely no Trump supporters, because we're not allowing other opportunities in that.
I really liked how you phrased that. There was actually a couple of terms that I specifically picked out, but just the key term that I really wanted to focus on there was education and giving the people information was the exact word you used was information, and giving these people the chance to access this information. Now, what do you mean by that? Because we in Canada, I don't think that we quite have the same type of issue that you guys do with access to information, or not access, but rather what information is forced upon you depending on where you are or what you're doing. Like, could you maybe explain what you mean by access to information a bit?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, it's a mess, Thomas. Different news divisions have their own personal views and what information they're going to feed the public. So I'm not going to say I agree 100% with Trump when he says fake news, but there are various outlets that really do push their agenda. So we're talking news channels, radio station, online places, and unfortunately people get tons of information, and not always is it accurate. So they're led to believe whatever the topic may be, but yet there's additional information that they're not aware of. And so this is where you could take any topic. If you look at the site, you may see a topic on Donald Trump's taxes, where one group will believe one thing and another group believes another thing. Well, we'll just go off of facts and not off of what, Fox News said or NBC said or Alex Jones, So there's so many different sources, and people tend to migrate to the ones they like and believe. But they need to kind of step back and look at all sources to get their information and come to a conclusion.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And just earlier in the first part of the show, there I was mentioning how originally I started this group by actually doing research on Hillary, and because I had heard a lot of stuff about both of them. But when I actually did my legitimate, real research, checking multiple sources, going to multiple places, not just believing the first opinion news article that I read or see or whatever it is, I found a startling amount of inconclusive evidence. And it really, what that made me look at more than anything wasn't what they were saying, but it was the fact that they were all saying so much, but there was so little fact behind it. And it was the exact opposite of Donald Trump, where you would hear all this crazy stuff, and you'd be like, no way, No way. No, he did not steal from a cancer fund. No. Reuters didn't write about Reuters didn't write about that. Like no, like he didn't commit fraud in March 2017 and had to pay a $25 million settlement for 2 class action lawsuits. He didn't do that. And although it turns out he did. And it blows you away when you start checking into these multiple sources. Now, why do you think it is? And I haven't prepped you at all on any of this, so I have no idea what you're going to say, but I think it's going to be interesting to hear. Obviously, you've seen other media sources, you know, far right or far left, either way.
Sure.
Things like, say, the Breitbart report's pretty far right. You could name something pretty far left too. It doesn't really matter. But why do you think it is that these people actively go out of their way to propagate this type of thing? What motive do you think they might have?
You know, unfortunately, there's various levels of where this has come from. It's not like one pinpointed thing. I can tell you that these, unfortunately, like the alt-right news media, they have their specific targets of what they want to hit, and it just hits home to certain people. And they want to buy it. They buy it. They like what they're hearing. They believe what they're hearing. And then you've got this president who, before he was president, he was, you know, on the campaign kind of addressing all these little rumors about him to his favor. So it was like, see, it's getting confirmed. It's true what he says, you know. So kind of like if you really want to believe something, you're going to look for the sources to basically validate that. And we're not in a time where I wish people would be a little more open and say, wait a minute, let me just weigh in both things. But if you tend to migrate to wanting to believe the specific information, you're going to look for everything to validate it, and that's what you're going to spew out to the world. You're going to say, no, he didn't rape anybody. No, he didn't, not pay bills and so on and whatever, because I saw it on this news and I heard Trump say it during his campaign. And kind of what you're willing to literally take in and believe. So unfortunately, I don't even want to say it's coming down of America because I hate that. But we believe everything we're told, and it's time to not do that. It's time to really research it.
We're not dumbing down America. We're just increasing their gullibility.
No.
There's a positive spin to everything, right?
Sure, there should be.
So, let's see. I had a really, really great topic that I wanted to talk to you about really quickly here. What was it?
You know, I think I have something I wanted to
Yeah. What do you want to talk about?
Well, the funny thing is the topic, the name, I hate Donald Trump.
Oh, there's a lot of controversy about that.
Right. And I love it. I don't want it to ever change. I hope you never change your mind. But we do get people that say, hey, why do you have to use such a hateful word? It makes me feel like I'm in a hate group. And, I despise him. Can't we use despise or something along those lines? And then, the reality is this group has, you really thought this one through, right? Before coming up with this name. And it was very clear to me.
Well, why don't you go ahead? What do you interpret? Why? I mean, I'm pretty sure I've talked to you about this once or twice, but what do you understand? Yeah. Why did I pick that name? I actually had, believe it or not, just over a week ago now, about 8 days ago, I had a lady who actually works with the BBC call me. And she actually was writing an article about this group, but she was doing it on the basis that she thought it was a hate group. And she was going to do an expose on me as the leader or whatever. And so I talked with her for half an hour. And by the end of the phone call, she couldn't do her expose anymore because it didn't make sense. But why don't you go ahead and... Yeah, no. She's like, you got to come work for the... But anyway, why don't you explain why I Hate Donald Trump is not a hate group?
It's not a hate group. It's mostly saying there are these character flaws and issues that create such a turbulence in people's lives. And this is something I hate to be involved in. You know, you can't say, yeah, you can say I despise him, but you can despise him and move on. With it being the word hate, hate is a powerful word. It is strong. It's not a hate group against any race, any, you know, nationality, whether you're gay, straight. It has nothing to do with that. It's all around the character flaws of this one particular individual who now has this platform as a president of a leader of the free world to really unite us or divide us. And his choice is what? Definitely not to unite us. He keeps us divided. He has done horrible things from bankruptcies to, unfortunately, sexual assaults. I mean, the list goes on. I would encourage anybody to come online and you can just see all the information we have. It's all available there. And this is why the word hate is used. Is why would you be okay with this? This is not okay. These things that he emulates as his persona are all things that we don't want to be, whether he's president or not.
Absolutely.
But because he is president, it amplifies it even more so.
Yeah, I think you pretty much state it with your with the timing of when you joined the group in November, prior to him being president. It's not his post in the White House that we hate. It is what he does as a person, who he does it to. The one line that I quoted to the lady at the BBC, I haven't mentioned your name yet because I actually was thinking about giving her a call, and this was an excellent test. It turns out this works, so I very well may do that. But what I told her is, I stopped her right in the middle of her questioning, and I go, let me ask you a couple questions real quick. Do you hate sexual assault, or do you just really dislike it when you're sexually assaulted? And she made a quick joke. She's like, well, I mean, some sexual... I'm like, no, that's surprise sex. I'm talking real sexual assault. Let's drop the sex. Tell you what, if you get defrauded and you lose your house, do you hate that, or do you just kind of... Are you just kind of uncomfortable with that?
Exactly.
Are you going to get over it? Is it kind of a thing that you're just going to forget about? Or
no.
Or let's take it a step further. Let's say the President of the United States is tasked with national defense, oddly enough. And Syria goes off and he fires some chemical missiles or whatever they do. And he says, bomb them. And then you are firing possibly the incorrect missiles because your president owns stock in those missiles.
Mm-hmm.
National defense was just outweighed by his personal profit. Now that's, I mean, you shouldn't ever have to even question whether you use the right missiles. But it literally, every single aspect of this. I feel like I've gone off on a tangent again, and I typically tend to do that. But so let's see, what else here? There definitely is many things that I would like to converse over here. Most recently in the news, have you heard about Bannon?
Yes.
What happened there?
Wow, I find that to be really interesting. I know the world doesn't seem to be somewhat in shock because of the revolving door of his administration, which is probably the worst we've ever seen. We've never seen this type of turnover, but I'm actually very surprised because Bannon was his biggest supporter and really contributed to his campaigns and the message and the specific audience that he was really geared towards, you know, and with Bannon being part of Breitbart was really spreading, you know, the whole Trump for president and why, and unfortunately in a very hateful, racist manner, but it worked in his favor tremendously. And so I kind of was surprised to see that he is no longer there.
You know,
I was like, wait a minute.
I was
what?
too. I mean, it's very, very recent that this even happened, so it's all speculation at this point that it's even verified, actually. I heard that there was 2 unnamed sources within the White House that said that he had been released, but one of them said that he had been invited to resign, and I'd been reading some other articles previously about how people get removed from the administration when they attempt to essentially steal the limelight from yeah, and so then you start looking at what Bannon has been doing in very recent days, and it has been a lot of high profile interviews, and he has been doing a lot of advertising, very, very hard advertising, which would, and I mean, that could be entirely coincidental, but then you look back at the rest of the Trump administration, which is no longer with us, and there's a striking resemblance to some other people, like, you know, Kellyanne Conway. She still works for him, right? She's still with him? Yeah? I remember she was on the news just about every day for a while.
Yeah, she kind of got pulled away from
and then suddenly she is just gone for 2-3 weeks, doesn't say a word. And I think, wow, that's odd. And now, who else was it? There was Sean Spicer. He's gone, right? But
Scaramucci.
Pardon?
The other Scaramucci. What's it?
Scaramucci. Yeah, Scaramucci. Yeah. Scaramucci, he was getting way, like, him and his vulgarity and his just, like, disregard for everything, he got way more publicity in the, what was it, 3 days or 5 days? How long? I don't know. It's fun stuff. It's a roller coaster ride every turn. Unfortunately, it's your country that's at stake, so that's, I mean, we shouldn't.
Well, true. You know what I've noticed is that these are Trump's choices, but I think the GOP does tend to influence probably some of this turnover.
Absolutely.
Because they don't want to look stupid, you know?
Salvage what you can, right? I mean, at this point, you either got to go back to the Republican Party or scrap the Republican Party and create the new Republican Party and call it the NRP or something.
Well, and this is a very scary GOP. I've never, ever been concerned with a Republican that has become president. I didn't want that because I'm a Democrat, but I didn't fear it.
You know, you weren't like, oh no, everything could fall to pieces. That was never a possibility, you know? Like, even Bush, he had his dad. What's the worst that could happen? You go to war, but you'd win it at least.
Right. So I can't even say that this is a normal Republican Party, but if they need a complete turnover, there's something awful going on here. I don't understand it, and I don't understand what's conservative about anything that they're doing.
That reminds me, I remembered what I wanted to bring up earlier, and this is actually going to be closing right in on close to the end of our interview. So we've got about five more minutes, 10 more minutes ish. But so this will be one of the last topics. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but odd timing, right before the president said he was looking into if he could pardon himself, I was looking into whether the president could pardon himself. And so I don't know. Anyways, I was looking into it, and I found the answer. And I guess there's a couple of questions. Can he pardon other people? First off, yes. Yes, he can. He's the president. He can say that's not treason. You're fine. Now, maybe a better question: Can he pardon you before somebody is even aware that you've done something wrong?
Right.
Yes, he can.
Wow, really?
Yeah. And here's an even worse one. Can he do it in private? In secret?
Yes.
Yep.
I bet he can.
He sure can. So basically what that means is no matter what evidence we find, no matter what turns up, no matter what happens, it is possible that none of his family ever go to jail.
Wow, well, that's a little deflating.
Yeah. So now here's the better news. I've got two pieces of better news for you. Number one, they stipulate currently that he cannot pardon himself.
Oh.
He cannot. That is the legal agreement at the moment for that particular question, is he cannot pardon himself. And during the Mueller investigation, now I should probably just start this off by saying I actually am an accounting major, so I do understand this a little bit. During the Mueller investigation, Mueller was given full access to investigate Trump in any capacity and any means necessary to determine if there was a link to Russia. This included full release of Donald Trump's taxes against his will.
Right.
This is very, very important. The reason this is important is because I'm going to go ahead and say with 99% certainty there are criminal tax evasion charges to be laid. Now, you won't hear about these while he is the president, because you can't do that while he's the president. However, he cannot be the president forever, and criminal charges don't go away. So as soon as he's done, he's done.
Oh, he's gonna be done.
Now, they've actually found, like the public has found, quite compelling evidence of criminal tax evasion based on the things that have been released. Such as, now I'm just going to tell you this from the best of my memory. Donald Trump sold some sort of property to one of his sons. I believe it was condominium. Now, this isn't an issue. I don't know if sold is even the correct term, actually, but it went from Donald Trump's to one of his sons. I believe it was Eric. Or Donald Trump Jr. It doesn't really matter. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can do this, and that you may want to consider doing this if you want to get around paying huge taxes, especially if you're relatives. You are allowed to gift things to one another and pay different types of taxes. So these different types of taxes, they're public or not public or whatever, but they're traceable. You can check what the tax rate was at that time for that type of tax. You can check how much that particular dwelling or establishment was worth according to market values at that time, because they are listed, right? If you're buying and selling things, it gets listed, so it's posted. So there's an expected amount of taxes that should be received regardless of how you choose to do it, whether it's a gift or a sale. There's a price and there's an expected amount of taxes that should be incurred. Now, with this particular example, taxes were paid, but it was the wrong taxes, or the wrong amount. Either way, they could. I'm not sure which one it was, but the fact is, it was wrong, and the way it was wrong would indicate it was stated as being one thing and they actually did another at the criminal level. So gifting versus selling and the taxes implicated with those would have been averted. And those particular taxes belong to the state. Those particular taxes belong to you, the American people. Now, because you're missing those tax dollars, the state's not going to forget about that. They've got your back, unlike Donald Trump. Anyways, that is only one of the ways. If you really wanted to look this up, there's actually 3,500 different regular business litigations out there on the courts, and there's 169 plus federally named ones. And
wow.
Yeah, so this isn't new to me. I expected this the whole time. And if you're, maybe I'm a little biased at this point, but if, like now, yeah, I am expecting the same behavior from Trump, and when I look for it, it's not just there with proof, it's there with court documented proof. So so I guess I don't know how you feel about the fact that his family can be pardoned but he can't. What do you, how does that make you feel?
Well, I would like them for all to be held responsible, but if he ultimately could be held responsible, I would totally be fine with that. I would be, you know, I mean, they would all have to deal with it, you know, because with those criminal charges and everything that happens, who knows what will happen to all these properties and so forth.
That's true.
When they identify how much was, you know, it's a tax evasion no different than like Al Capone. He ended up, you know, you see what happened to him. And so that doesn't mean the families get to keep all these properties and things. They're going to suffer some way or another. Maybe
That is
not criminally.
absolutely true. That is absolutely true. So I'm just going to ask you one final question here because we're running out of time. When I'm going to be optimistic here and say when Donald Trump is done, and if it's prior to his term being over, what do you think will happen?
What do I think will happen? That's a very good question because we don't know exactly how he would go down and who would go down with him. You know, if Mike Pence is part of this whole collusion that Mueller is looking into, then obviously it wouldn't be Pence that would take over as president. And we've never been in this position before. So I believe there's a hierarchy of who would be next, but there's also the possibility that, I don't know, it might go back to Hillary. There's that one possibility as well, so it's very hard to say.
Honestly, I mean, a logical strategy at this point. If I was Trump, I would be going like, what are the possible ways I can get out of this? And I can actually think of two, believe it or not. So one way that Donald Trump can get out of this and he will stay out of jail is if he moves to Russia. He's good. He's good there. Now, the second way, and slightly more creative, is if he calls up Hillary, he goes, Hillary, I'm so sorry. You can be the president if you give me a pardon. Because Hillary can give him a pardon.
Oh, I would love that. Not that I want him pardoned, though, but yeah, that's actually a pretty cool way to get around it, isn't it?
That would totally work. It would be totally legit. So,
I love that.
You know, with that, I think I'm going to let you go. We're going to call this interview over, and thank you so much again for joining us on the Info Assault with Live.
Thank you. That was fun. I appreciate that. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. And again, this is on www.jessfm.ca. We were talking about the Facebook group I Hate Donald Trump with one of our moderators, Carmen Wells from California.
Yeah! Join us! Join us!
And it's actually a lot of fun as long as you don't find too many trolls lurking about there. But we're a group of good people that if you reach out and try to talk to us, we're definitely willing to speak back with you. So I hope that you enjoyed all of this, and thank you so much again for taking the time out of your day to speak with me, Carmen.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
I have found people that have no place to go in this city, and I help them find a way as well, because somebody helped me find a way.